to WCEG Take a Stand. My name is Reverend Diane Dougherty, and I'll be your host today. You can watch us on Smart TV or the WCEG Network, even on YouTube. My partner, Demita Chapman, and myself interview activists in the local setting that are bringing the community to empowerment. WCEG stands for the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, and we want you to be empowered to do what you have the power to do. We speak life into our communities. Go ahead and like us on Facebook or Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, this is a disclaimer. The topics and opinions of those on this show do not belong to the WCEG Network. And with that, I would like to introduce to you two exciting and wonderful activists that are working for school reform, which is at the heart of my, it's at the heart of my love, having been a teacher for 47 years. So we are talking to Aireane, I hope I said your name right, Montgomery, and Anthony Downer. They are both activists of grand proportion. I met them both during a wonderful rally we had, and also on Facebook, keeping up with all of the legislation that's happening at the Capitol, which is ratcheting up very, very quickly. So Anthony describes himself as an abolitionist educator. He's a teacher, a mentor, and most particularly an excellent community organizer that prioritized Black-centric curriculum and instruction in secondary and tertiary education. So he is a consultant, a political strategist, curriculum developer, and a researcher of, are you ready for this? Critical race studies. All right. Wonderful woman, Aireane, is an educational equity consultant and a CEO at her young age. And she works with marginalized groups in public education to get them the resources and guidance needed for equitable representation. Very important. CNN caught wind of her. She's been on CNN, she's been on MSNBC, she's been in the AJC, and she has lists of sources in the media. So we welcome both of you. And now I'd like to hear a little bit. Let's start with Aireane. What would you like to say beyond that about who you are?
Absolutely. I will say that I'm an educator first. Education is near and dear to my heart. It is something that saved me as a child and continues to save me to this day. And so that is why I'm so passionate about the things that I do within the advocacy world concerning education. You cannot be an educator without being an advocate, just due to the inequities within education since the dawn of time. And so I'm very passionate about my work. I'm a big proponent of coalition building with other organizations that are in the fight, even if it does look a little different. And so I'm just happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to know you. Look at that smile. Anthony, tell us something about yourself that I didn't list.
Well, listen, family, thank you so much for having us on air. Aireane and I are so glad to be here. Aireane and I describe ourselves as abolitionist educators, which means that we believe in not only trying to band-aid and fix this system, but tear this whole system of public education down and start anew, beautifully so, just like our ancestors and our freedom fighters that came before us did with institutions like Jim Crow and slavery. Aireane also adds ratchetdemic, and so if I can borrow that from her, we are ratchet in the classroom, which means that we let our joyful Black selves out in the classroom. I just saw my students today for the first time in almost a week. So we had a lot of catching up to do, a lot of dancing, a lot of TikToks to catch up on, a lot of laughs. We also spent the day learning about Angela Davis in honor of Women's History Month and International Women's Day tomorrow. And those things show you how passionate I am about my classroom. I work at Frederick Douglass High School. I teach Africana Studies and civics on the west side of Atlanta, and I love what I do every single day. Might not love the system under which I work, but I love the students, and I love the families, the people that I get to interact with every day, and that's what drives my work.
I love it. That's a very important concept. What was the word?
Ratchetdemic. As a Black person, we have to code switch a lot. There's times when we have to be prim and proper, like we did. We just came back from DC. We did a workshop at the College Board Conference, and there's time we kind of let our hair down, if you will, in front of our students, and that's a balancing act, that code switching. But that's our brand of being culturally relevant, is allowing our Blackness and our relevance with the younger generation to shine in our teaching.
Spell it.
Aura. ATC AEMID.
Put it in the chat.
I'm putting the chat.
Because I think
we're not ELA teachers, Libby, for our listeners.
Did you make up the word?
No. Okay. So there's an amazing educational reformist. That's what I'll call him. His name is Dr. Christopher Emdin. And he has 2 books that are bestsellers. One is For White Folks That Teach in the Hood and Others Too, and then Ratchetdemic. And so our work is really patterned off of the work that he has done throughout the trajectory of his educational experience. Very brilliant. Reminds me of like the new age Paulo Freire, really talking about the neo-indigenous population, which he considers to be Black students, and how they need to really be able to be taken care of within the United States. And so very brilliant work that I definitely pattern myself off of. And I see that other educators do as well that are pretty progressive within the classroom.
All right, now I'm going to let you write his name and the name of the book in the chat so that we can capture the chat. So let's begin. One of the things I want to do is divide this into 3 parts. Three important conversations that are limited and in no way will be able to cover the ground that we need to cover. But the first that is really important has to do with legislation. And there's a new bill that was put out. Are you familiar with it? It's called 517. It's a new kind of a voucher bill because House Bill 60 that would have given $6,000 per student to anyone that wanted to put their child in any school, public or private, was kind of kiboshed because the speaker was not going to give it floor time. So they have come back with a new bill called 517, I think it is. And that bill is going to pull $100 million in addition to the $100 million that's there into what is called a tax education credit. And that means that there will be $200 million of taxpayer dollars that will be pulled out of the pot, leaving education within various areas, public education, at a loss. So what I find is that you have, with the right hand, the legislators giving money to fully fund the QBE that has never been fully funded. with one hand, and with another hand, they're taking monies out or away through different means. It's a power shift. Are you aware of those two, of this new House bill?
Yeah, so generally I've been following the voucher fight, and we saw the collapse of the Senate bill. I will say first and foremost that we are against any underfunding of public education. And this is once again a ploy to segregate our schools, to allow white families to take their students out of public education. And as you said, the QBE hasn't been funded ever, especially in the last 20 to 25 years. I will also say, though, that we have to have the conversation for Black families that are concerned about the public school system, that can constantly question, is this the option that should be for my student in the short term, or do I need to look to an alternative? So for those families that feel that public school is not a space for them, I do have some empathy, but this is not the solution. Underfunding our public schools can't happen.
Or shifting funding,
Yeah.
taking out of one pot and creating another. I asked who benefits and at the tax education credit. The money goes into, a pot. But right now, the administrator is under investigation for misuse and fraud of the funds that are already in it. So I don't think that the mechanisms are there to make this a strong program that is going to promote education, like you said, in the short run. So what other bills are there that are impacting, that are up, that you think will pass, because the infamous crossover day is coming up? And if a bill does not pass by crossover day, it's laid over for next year. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And so I just want to briefly summarize some of those bills, and then, of course, allow us to kind of respond to those. And so on the House side, some of the major, what we're calling classroom censorship or divisive concepts bills include AAA. AAA is most likely to die in favor of 1084, which just passed the House on Friday and is on its way to the Senate. There's also 1178, which passed Friday, which is being dubbed the Parents' Bill of Rights, which we'll talk a little bit more on. And then on the Senate side, you have 226, which I've got to track that again. I believe it passed the Senate and it's in the House. That's the book ban bill, where parents can kind of ban classroom or library books. 335, it's unclear on what's going to happen with 335, because 337, which is the Senate version of the classroom censorship bill, is a little bit ahead. So the committee is still debating 337, but it's a little bit ahead of 335. And then we have 369 that, of course, us being from Gwinnett, we wanted to make sure that was on the table for discussion, because 369 is the nonpartisan, makes the Gwinnett County Board of Education elections nonpartisan and moves them up to May. That has passed both houses and been signed by the governor as of 2 weeks ago.
It is really just mind-boggling. Where can you put the a reference where people can check a site that gives the names of those bills so that they can be aware of what it is, and put it in the chat?
Yes, I'll do you one better. There's this beautiful tracker that the organization IDRA put together that looks at all these bills, not just across education, but looks at some of the other areas. It talks about the bill that would limit the participation of transgender girls in sports, for instance, and then goes over some other areas. So I'm going to drop this, which is, in my view, much better and much more accessible than some of the websites the government uses. Surprise there? No.
Well done.
But that is the tracker that I've been kind of spreading the word on. And you can look at the specific bills I mentioned and even more. You can look at who sponsored them, where they are in their legislative process, and therefore look at the likelihood of it passing.
Aireane, how do you get people to participate in the legislative process when you're so busy in school? Both of you are. And it's like in a big cloud. For those who are not paying attention, it's really, really hard to do any advocacy And because they know we're not going to advocate, that's how these bills get through. So give us some clues or some insight into how you keep up with it with a full-time job, and how we can also.
Absolutely. I will say, I'm glad to have Anthony on my side because wow. Okay. He is really big in policy, and it really does help to have really a team that looks at different things. So I will give Anthony credit where credit is absolutely due. He is really a big proponent on making sure that a lot of these policies are known, and that we know what affects us, our organization, and students, stakeholders in education, making sure that we spread out this information. The way I'm able to make sure I stay up to date as much as possible on policies that are going through legislation at this moment is even involving my students directly. A lot of the material that I read, I give to my students, especially since I am a contemporary issues teacher. This is a contemporary issue, therefore it does align to the standards. So I just make sure that there's a way as an educator to still teach the full truth and nothing but the truth by making sure that we can align this to the particular standards that we're teaching. Students do care about their trajectory in the classroom. They want the autonomy. They want to be able to really have a voice when it comes to educational reform. And I'm a big proponent of making sure that students are at the focal point of any decisions that are going through that has to do with anything within their education. So that is how I'm making sure that my students stay up to date. I think another thing is really making sure that we teach our students how to be big proponents of this educational reform by educating their parents as well. I make sure that, I let my students know how important this is. I'm making sure that they have a seat at the table, even if it's on the local level where I'm in equity teams. If I'm in equity teams and I'm reading, my students are reading the exact same thing because, again, I'm not an expert as a student in the classroom anymore. I'm the teacher. Therefore, I need to rely on my students to let me know the legitimacy of what is being said on behalf of them.
What are the initials IDRA stand for?
Let me not get this wrong. Intercultural Development Research Association. And yes. These are our partners. Don't want to get their name wrong. Got to put some respect on their name. So yes.
Okay. And Anthony,
yes.
How did you get involved with them?
Well, there's always, for grassroots folks like us, organizers, we wake up and we just do this. And I will say there's a lot of organizations that depend on that energy. They depend on us knowing the ins and outs, the day-to-day, what's happening, especially Aireane teaching Gwinnett County Public Schools. If you're going to interact with Gwinnett County Public Schools, you need to know someone who's getting the emails, who feels the impact of policies and procedures. And then also the people that know the people. We know who to go to when it comes to organizing on this issue in the state of Georgia. And IDRA have been doing some of this work in Texas. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful in stopping that legislation there. And so they've been trying to take this model throughout the southern states and help plug into the coalitions that we have focused on education. So they've really been a great policy-oriented, Black-led organization that has helped support us financially, number one, but also with some of that time and management. They help put together some of the materials like that Airtable, which has been really, really important because we have 9-to-5s. I don't have time to go through every single bill and decipher it. I just got time to talk about the talking points. So they're really helpful on that back end.
I was really impressed with the team that came here, and was noticing the last time we had a meeting, which is every Monday night if anybody wants to join, how much better this year is than other years that we've been in, because we're blindsided. As a retired teacher, I have time to be an advocate but I don't have the understanding that they do about the political process, what crossover day is, why that's important. And maybe you could talk now a little bit about crossover day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are very short. We're 8 days out from one of the most important days of our legislative session. Next Tuesday, March 15th, will be crossover day, which is the deadline to pass any bill in either house so that it can go to the other house for consideration. And this is also the time when they will start doing conferencing. So they're trying to iron out the differences if both houses pass a similar or the same bill. And so if a bill is not passed in either house by this deadline, it will have to wait until the 2023 legislative session. And so this will really be a big day because these are when bills are being sent to the governor for him to sign. We have a lot of things. First, to Aireane's point, the students are leading the charge and the organizing on crossover day. The students on March 9th in 2 days. And this is a little exclusive for your listeners. This is not public information fully yet. In 2 days, the students will be resuming the 1960 Atlanta student movement by releasing a 2022 version of the Appeal for Human Rights. They'll do that to cap off a trip to Selma to mark the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And then on the 15th, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., students will be hosting a sit-in and other public actions at the state capitol. So these next 2 weeks, this week and next week, students are leading all the charges and the rest of us are kind of shutting up and supporting from behind.
Tell me what are the legislations or policies they want passed, and what are the legislations and policies they want quashed?
That's a very good question. So all the ones that I mentioned at the very beginning, they want legislators to vote no on these. They want the governor to veto them. And I'm glad you mentioned that because we're not just in opposition to things. We are also freedom dreaming about what educational equity could look like. So for instance, there's some advocates out of Gwinnett who are pushing a Georgia version of the Crown Act. If you're not familiar with that, that would abolish discrimination in workplaces and public places on hair, and which is a huge issue, especially for our Black girls and women across Georgia. They also want to see their legislators vote yes on things like HB 10 being sponsored by Representative Scott, which would increase funding for poor students. They want a vote yes on, there's a bill to require halal options in public school cafeterias. There's a bill to require the additional of consent to be added to our sex education curriculum across the state. And so students can get, of course, they get some of that in college, but they would start getting that as early as elementary school or middle school. And so you can see very clearly these priorities that students are talking about. They want more voice, they want more equity, they want more teachers of color in the classroom, they want more support in their public schools. And so they do have a list of priorities that they want their legislators to vote yes on, and those priorities that they want them to vote no on.
So how can we help the students? I mean, you listed a whole bunch of them I'd never heard of, but I really agree with that. I love the Crown bill. That's great.
Yes, I'll give just a few,
I do not like, I'm teaching in the classroom, I do not like girls that put beads in their hair and they have 1,000 little braids and they turn their head and there's so much noise. Everyone's distracted. I do not like that.
I want to mention just a few things, and then I want to, of course, pass on to Aireane to see, because I'm in Atlanta public schools, and then Aireane is in Gwinnett County public schools, and so we, of course, have to differentiate our approaches. And so those listeners, young, old, wherever you are, even if you're not in the state of Georgia, I will implore you to do some of the following things. Please, 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 between now and April 4th, April 4th is called Sendai. It's the last day of the legislative session, the last day any votes can be had this legislative session. Between now, call and email all members of the General Assembly, the governor and the lieutenant governor, to talk about what bills you want to see advanced and which bills you want to see stopped. Make sure to include all, not just your elected official. Go ahead and CC every one of them, all 56 senators, all 180 House of Representatives, and on both the governor and the lieutenant governor. I know that folks can't always make it to the hearings, which they announce sometimes days before. And so one of the best things is to write a testimony that you can then submit to the committee, the entire committee. And again, we'll make sure to send out the information for those. And then show up to the General Assembly, show up to these public actions, show up to your local school boards, show up to PTA meetings. You have to make your presence known, whether it's virtually or physically, to let your voice be heard. And so those are just some of the ways, and of course, students are helping across social media. Those are some of the ways in Atlanta we're imploring people to get active.
Can you tell if one of the students is listening right now and wants to write a testimony and get it to you, do they send it to the Gwinnett County educators website?
Oh, you can always reach out to Georgia educators for equity and justice. We can help with any of these advocacy. And I think Aireane can tell you more about that.
Yeah, because I think that's important. How do they get in touch with you if they're listening? And I have a question, because since this is an interview, it will be live on all of these networks. So your little secret's going to get out. Is that all right?
That's absolutely fine. No, that's perfect. I might get in trouble with some of the students, but we're fine. We're fine.
People want to know.
Too many details.
We support them. All right, Aireane, what do you say?
If you guys want to, definitely reach out. We encourage students to be at the focal point of this movement. Again, reach out to us via email. I have typed that in the chat, but it's GA Educators, 4, equity and justice @gmail.com. Like Anthony was saying, our districts are different. I have the privilege of actually teaching in the district that I was raised in. And so when I was in school there was definitely a different demographic. And so definitely a different way of approaching that particular different demographic. At this point, we're just making sure that Gwinnett County is continually assessing their demographics, the resources that they need to make sure that, we are providing an equitable education for all of our students. I think, and Anthony can tell me the bill that made our school board bipartisan, or not bipartisan, but nonpartisan, is a detriment to Gwinnett County Public Schools, and I'll tell you why. It's already very difficult to get.
Explain that before you go on. Excuse me, please. Explain the difference between nonpartisan and bipartisan.
Okay, and I messed up by saying bipartisan. Bipartisan is meaning that two of our main parties, Republican and Democrat, are getting together and making a compromise on whatever they decide to compromise. Maybe whether it's a law, a bill that they propose. When we're saying nonpartisan, that means that there is no political parties running anymore. These people are running on their own, so they're not running under the Democratic ticket or the Republican ticket, and they're not going to be running during a presidential year. So they will be running, instead of November, they'll be running during May. Correct? Am I correct? This is a detriment, especially when you have this term called vote down ballot. So even though you might not know a particular person that is running, if you're affiliated with the Democratic Party, you're going to vote down ballot. If you're affiliated with the Republican Party, you're going to vote down ballot. There is times where a lot of our marginalized citizens are not able to get out to the polls. And so during election years, it is easier to get them coerce or get them all together to get out to the polls and vote. But when you're in a nonpartisan, during a nonpartisan election, you're not going to have as many marginalized people come out and vote. And therefore, it's going to be very difficult to maintain the level of progressiveness that we've had in the county thus far. And so I am as a political scientist, I am worried, that if there's not a lot of issues that are going on that is directly affecting citizens, marginalized citizens, that they might not get out to the polls the way they need to get out to the polls. And so it's up to us as activists and advocates that still have a 9 to 5 to really make sure that they understand the importance of, where we have came from and where we are now to where we could go potentially if we do not have those voters show up at the polls in May. So I am a little worried. This is really a big hit to Gwinnett County. And to be honest, I know it's intentional, and I'll just say it now, loud and clear. It's intentional. It's intentional to take away what we have done as a county in making sure that diverse perspectives are represented. And so as of right now, we are going to do our best in making sure that all stakeholders understand the seriousness of getting out to vote, which really has a direct effect on their students' education and the generations to come. So,
yeah. I'd like to break in and talk about a little bit about Gwinnett County and what you are talking about. This occurred started in December and was carried over in January when they were doing redistricting. And so what they did with Gwinnett County, which used to be, and maybe it still is, the largest county in Georgia, and even in, someone said in the United States, one of the largest in the United States.
I think we're number 12 or 13.
It's what?
Number 12 or 13.
Oh, is it? I mean, it's really, really huge. And one of the gifts of Gwinnett County was the diversity that has grown and been nurtured by numbers of African Americans, Hispanics. The demographics is an amazing, amazing accomplishment. But what has happened is the leadership in Gwinnett County was quite diverse. As a matter of fact, I think that, didn't I hear it was all people of color before?
Up and down. Up and down.
And that's a real historic thing for the South in itself. And there was a gentleman who's a legislator that put in a bill to redistrict Gwinnett County. And there were a number of people that worked on maps. The latest rendition was a map that did the least bit of harm and maintained the quality of voter diversity in the whole county. However, when they sent it to the committee made their own map. And they, instead of having a wide variety of diverse counties, divided the county into 4 pieces and diluted the people of color, the vote of the people of color. And when that happened, once you dilute the votes of the people of color, that impacts superintendents, the school system itself, and it changes the entire landscape of Gwinnett County as they know it. And that is what we're talking about when we say the nonpartisan school board and the issue of voting in May. People don't even know what district they're in right now. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to where they even vote, because that would change all of the places where they are ballots. So right now, isn't that map under opposition from the ACLU? Mm-hmm. Am I right about that?
Yes, ma'am. The ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the NAACP.
And they're hoping that before May, it will be stopped. And I mean, if they would just stop that movement, we could go back to the original voting districts for now until all this can be sorted out.
Yes, the to your point, one of the largest things wrong with this is not really that the districts would become nonpartisan, but the fashion in which this is being done. Senator Dixon represents a small segment of this school district, and in fact, he and his children, he sends his children to Beaufort City schools. They are not enrolled in Gwinnett County Public Schools. He has no democratic right as a minority member of the minority party in Gwinnett County to dictate something that will impact all 1 million citizens. In addition, we know that about 40% of school districts in the state of Georgia out of the 180 are nonpartisan. And so again, this is not out of the ordinary. It would be a change for Gwinnett, but it's that this decision wasn't being made by the actual people. Aireane and I helped co-found this organization called Gwinnett Educators for Equity and Justice 2 years ago, which is separate from Georgia Educators. But that year, which was an election year, we focused on flipping the Board of Education. So I want to shout out the constituents, the organizers, the parents, the families who actually put in the work to make sure that for the first time in our history, our Board of Commissioners, every major elected position in Gwinnett County, and our Board of Education is now majority Democratic and majority people of color. Now, the Democratic part is not as important as much as it is our county, our government is finally, for the first time, representative of the diversity. The people spoke very loud and clear when they sent Karen Watkins from District 1, Dr. Therese from District 5, Everton Blair from District 4 to represent the board. And we spoke very clearly, in fact, when we retired the longest serving superintendent in U.S. history. 25 years J. Alvin Wilbanks had been serving. We retired him and replaced him with the first Black and equity-centric superintendent. These are not accidents. These are not stolen results. These are the people using their democratic voice and speaking very loudly and clearly. And now we see fascists. Senator Dixon doesn't even have a college degree, but gets to tell me how my vote is counted and what I teach in my classroom. And it's not fair and it's not right.
Not democratic. And one of the things I question is, how did that happen? How did he get elected? Who put him in? And I those are rhetorical questions on my part, but I am looking all over the state of Georgia, especially with this movement against equity, diversity, and social emotional intelligence, and the entire process of helping our kids develop empathy. There's a small group that's trying to wipe all of that out of all public schools in Georgia. And to me, that is the essence of how we change the culture of our state and also the South. I think those are the biggest things that are lacking. So do you know how he got elected to that position? I mean, someone must have voted for him.
Well, I will say this. I'm not quite sure how he did get elected, but you see a lot of politicians that get elected that are underqualifying. I mean, we elected, no offense, and I say this with all sincerity in my heart, we elected President Trump. He is one of the only ones that do not have an Ivy League degree. He only has a bachelor's degree. He had no prior experience in politics, and it just goes to show when your privilege exceeds you, and how, again, and I talk about this, Dr. Brown that is going up for confirmation in the Senate for the Supreme Court. How do we finally have, this is a Black woman. We finally have a Black woman. As much as people are excited about this situation, I'm very disappointed. She is one of the only Supreme Court justices that actually has the criteria that it takes to really be a Supreme Court justice, yet she's still being questioned. And when we're talking about, and I'm glad Anthony made a great point, The Democratic Party is not loyal to Black women. The Democratic Party is not loyal to those that are marginalized. And when I think about as a Black woman in general, statistically support the Democratic Party at large more than any other ethnic group or gender. Yet we are the least likely to get and keep our seats within this political sphere. And so that is an issue, especially when we think about Dr. Therese, even on the board, the Gwinnett County School Board, and how we have changed these to more of a nonpartisan, or we've changed it to a nonpartisan election. We are worried that, again, the Democratic Party is going to fail us. And so I say this, it is time to reevaluate privilege. It is time to reevaluate credentials and not just keep placing up these idols and putting them in office when they don't even have the criteria to really even back up where they are.
I think you raised one of the major concerns that I have had. One of the biggest at my age reflections within within our democracy as it is. Our democracy is dependent on people, and depending on people's orientation and awareness, especially when we consider male supremacy. They can use the democratic process to interrupt the democratic process and to create a domination, to create through policy, political domination for the purpose of building wealth and power for themselves. And so this is not a conversation that many people have, but it is really a very important conversation for all of us to consider, because the forces of division, when you see a force of division, I ask myself one thing: who are the winners, who are the losers? And why are they working so hard to gain access to that population or that group? And when I answer that for myself, that's what I see. I see within the context of those three words, power, domination, and wealth building, I see a whole group of people that look at a school budget. Oh my, there's lots of money there. Let's go get it. I see educating a minority population from their eyes as one that could not work because they won't have a workforce that will make money for them. That will be the end of low wages. I see the policies that go through all of these bills as being power builders, because once you use the process and gain access to the power of those positions and those policies, they are in the bag. But in our democratic process, the more that we know, we can use it for our advantage and gain access over and above them. But we have to use the vote.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I just have some breaking news. I just got this text. SB 377 just passed out of the Senate committee, the Committee on Education and Youth. However, they took out the targeting on colleges. And so the big difference between 375 and 377 in the Senate is that 375 is focused on school districts. 377 is focused more on state government agencies, local government entities, but also does mention school districts. They have deleted, to help aid passage, they have deleted universities and colleges. If you think that's good news, also remember that Sonny Perdue became the new chancellor of the University System of Georgia. And so he will have his separate anti-CRT or classroom censorship effort coming up very soon.
And for those that don't know, that's the censorship bill.
Yep, main censorship bill out of the Senate.
And this is the one that makes my knees shake, especially you two as teachers, because any parent can come and say, you're teaching CRT, critical race theory.
You're absolutely right.
Especially in your position.
Yes. Any teacher, any parent can make a complaint. It's unclear on whether a parent can make a complaint on a teacher that does not teach their kid. Yes, you heard me correct. And so a parent in Gwinnett can maybe complain about me, and I'm not in Gwinnett any longer. And then as an additional consequence, any state agency, local government, school district that receives state funding and is found out of compliance with those state standards against classroom censorship will be, they can have their funding reduced by 10%.
And for those that don't know where this is coming from, the Republican legislators are putting this, they're trying to hit it like mud on a fan, wherever it will stick. And in Tennessee, for example, a very good teacher put out lesson plans on white privilege and sent them to those that had asked. And someone got wind of it. He, in turn, was examined by the school board, fired, and fined $10,000. And he can no longer teach in the system. So when you talk 377, the reason my knees knock is because it is so arbitrary. And they have groups of parents that are ready to do this. And so you don't know if you're the one that's going to be targeted, but they are going to hunt and find someone to hang up from it's almost a new form of lynching. And the consequences are really dire as far as I'm concerned. They should just try to do Anthony. We'll go after them. We'll support you or you, Aireane. We will support you in every way that's possible, but it is very unjust and wrong. And it's really,
keep going. I'm sorry.
I said it's really about racism. I mean, it's really about political power. It's a power grab.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Aireane.
I will say this, and Anthony can attest to this. Anti-CRT bills and laws will not stop us from teaching. I will say this, and hopefully I'm talking to teachers. There is strength in numbers. We have a teacher shortage now. It is time to collectively bargain for our needs and wants within the classroom. Educators are amongst the most educated people within the United States. And so how are you going to tell me how to teach my students in my class is just unacceptable. And if you think, especially in the South, as underpaid as we are really that pressed for this money, then you are sadly mistaken. So if my classroom is not in the formal sense where I'm teaching within a school district, I will still be having these lessons will be still going out. You're just going to give me a bigger stage to do that. So you let me know what you want to do.
Carry on with vigor. In my former, I've been in many schools, and what I found that teachers are quite poor. I was in a private school system. They're quite poor, and they will not do advocacy. But for the public school system, I think there are teachers that will do advocacy, and there is strength in numbers. And so the more that they push, there's an equal and opposite push. And I think that will bring all of us retired teachers out. But the big question that needs to be an overall umbrella discussion has to do with democracy. And how can a bill that allows one small person that is part of a growing politic have power over so many that they can change the trajectory of someone's profession? To me, that's not democracy. That's a I don't know what to call it.
I will say, I'm sorry, keep
Go
going.
ahead. What do you call it?
First of all, and I say this with my chest, the United States democracy in general is an experiment. So if we look at ancient Greece and we look at what we consider or what the founding democracy is, America has taken bits and pieces to continue to allow the privileged few the access to the power. So one thing I do want to respond to as well, teachers, us upcoming younger Black, even minority teachers, we are, to us and our generations, we are looked at as the new wealthy people. So you have to understand the type of resources that we haven't had for plenty of years before. And so us getting this master's degrees, us being able to teach within a, PWI, if you're teaching in PWI or a title school, is the new rich for us. So we are absolutely celebrating our ancestors. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. But again, I have to say on behalf of my ancestors that the United States was never built for me. The United States was never built to protect my rights. And therefore, I'm not confused about how people of privilege are attacking us now at this moment. And so again, we say, bring it on. Like our ancestors did, like Martin Luther King did, like Malcolm X did. Bring it on, like Angela Davis said. Bring it on. What's next for us? We are dodging these bullets. Sometimes some of us have to get hit. We understand that the sacrifice is necessary. And that's what they don't understand, is we are willing to sacrifice for the next generation coming up. And that, to be honest, you're not going to pigeonhole a teacher. As an educator, I am creative. I have much more to offer than just standing in this classroom. If you think that's what you're going to take from me, then again, you really don't understand. We have surpassed you in this game of politics, because again, we are willing to put ourselves on the line to make sure that the generations to follow are going to be able to have a more equitable world. And we're going to continue to teach our students how to make sure that they advocate for their part in intersectionality, how they see their America, what they want. So I'm not teaching a Black history. I'm not teaching a white history. I'm teaching a history of a diverse set of history, where I'm giving my students the self-efficacy that they deserve in order to really go out here and be the change makers in their own way. So they need to stand out of the way, the privileged few. We are not going to continue to allow the privileged few to have the soapbox. You can cry, you can gripe, you can complain. But again, this is a new day and age. You need to sit down, you need to take notes, and you need to stop having your fragility lead you within these races, even these bills that continue to put men on a pedestal. We're not going to continue to do this. This is Women's History Month. Let us in the door. It was just Black History Month. It was just Hispanic Heritage Month. Let us in the door. We're knocking the door down. And if you want to physically try to come at us in a certain type of way, we will rise from the ashes like a phoenix. I love y'all.
Jeez Louise.
Do y'all see who I get to work with?
That
You see who
voice.
my big sister is? Come on now. Stop playing with her. She the one, not the two. Come on now.
Twins by another mother. Oh my goodness. Two phoenixes. Well, you are. And from my perspective, I look at people, white people who have had privilege. And I think that in keeping with you, we need to advocate against them, to say, no, you may have white privilege, but you need to step down and look at the larger, broader picture. We're not going with you. We are not going to allow you to build another segregated educational system. We are really going to fulfill the dream that education is here for everyone. And we're going to build a world. We're going to build a South that is ready for everyone. And we'll get you the help that you need, because I believe it's a mental illness. within a democracy, thinking that you have power over people is a mental illness. We have power together. Thinking that that you can capture a population to make money for you in the next generation is an illness. I'm sorry. That money is to be redistributed for the gifts of all and for the hope of all for the next generation. And within both of those, that's where democratic power lies. So there you have it. We have two wonderful teachers with us today, Aireane Montgomery from Gwinnett County and Anthony Downer from Fulton County Schools. And they've given us a marvelous overview of what's happening within their counties, within the political scene, how the students they teach are advocating. Can either of you talk about Public Voices for Public Education? Are you familiar with that group? That's a group of that was started, I believe, by the Public Education Network. And there are students, you know, Alex Ames. She works with students to write op-eds and have conversations about how our public voices within a democracy need to be heard. And we need to focus on the big umbrella. I keep talking about big umbrellas, and that is we need to listen to everyone. Under the umbrella, everybody can have something to say, but we cannot diminish the other for ourselves. So closing words, this has been an absolutely incredible and awesome conversation. Ladies first, Aireane, what would you like as your closing to close this session on?
I will say this, something that I always close any session on is educators, be graceful with yourself, or just give yourself grace. We are all in different spots in our equity journey. Equity is not a destination, but it's an ongoing journey. And keep self-assessing where you are and understand how you teach in the classroom is going to have a direct influence on your students for the next 10 to 20 years. Make sure you're speaking words of life into your students, legislatures, make sure you're listening to your teachers, but also make sure you're having students' best interests at the focal point. All right, so education over politics. Again, we need to make sure we're educating the full student and we are not allowing ourselves to get into this political banter that is going to handicap our students' future.
Bingo. Thank you. Anthony.
Yes, thank you, Reverend. Thank you so much for the space. We're so excited to be here. Folks, remember March 15th. That is the crossover day. After work, after school, make your way down to the Capitol. We'll also have some activity on social media and Zoom. Please come down here, let your voice be heard on that day. We'll be out there until 11 p.m. that night. And then Georgia educators, shout out to them. We will be at the Network for Public Education Conference on April 30th through May 1st in Philadelphia. Philly, we coming out there. Reach out to us, connect with us. Thank y'all so much. Let's do this. We got this.
Well, you give me hope. It's the only way that these kids will have a chance for the future. And I look forward to it. So I thank both of you for being on. Maurice sends his regards, but he couldn't get a substitute. And I hope to have more conversations like this with young people who are taking a stand on the most important of all subjects, public education for all. So you've been listening to Take a Stand. I'm Reverend Diane Dougherty, and we're going to call it quits. But not for you. You carry on right to those legislatures and do what you have the power to do for the next generation. Thank you all.